Kuroshi optics. Best I've got, and should be about right under the circumstances. Lights out for a minute, all right? Well, how's it look? Feel all right to you?
Shit, Victor, not bad. I don't know what to say.
Nope, wrong clip. Restart. God damn it. That's not it either. What the fuck? So this is a video about how not to make the greatest game of all time. Cyberpunk 2077 is an expansive, open-world, first-person shooter RPG experience. Originally released in December of 2020 by CD Projekt Red, developers of the highly successful Witcher titles, the game is set in an expansive, futuristic open world, features high-profile actors such as Keanu Reeves and Idris Elba in prominent roles, and showcases a breathtaking, complex story that satirizes late-stage capitalism and invites us to question the very nature of human consciousness and what it means to have a soul. But it wasn't always this way. It used to be a broken mess. Any other game of its kind would have long been forgotten by the gaming community due to its catastrophic technical flaws upon initial release, but unlike those other games, it's managed to carve out its own legacy and cement itself, for better or worse, as an unlikely enduring memory in public consciousness. In today's video, we'll explore every facet of Cyberpunk 2077, the good, the bad, the weird, and the impact it's left behind. We'll answer the question that has been asked for the past 3 years: how does a bad game become great? And of course, just like all my analysis videos, this will contain heavy spoilers for the game, so if you haven't played it, this is your chance now to turn this video off before it's too late. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about Cyberpunk 2077. So I usually start these analysis videos with a quote that summarizes the theme or some kind of mental exercise that relates to whatever I'm talking about. But Cyberpunk 2077 is a complicated subject to talk about, so we'll save the quote for the end. Instead, we'll skip ahead to the setting of our adventure, Night City, California. This rundown cityscape is the product of an economy that exists to further widen the gap between the ultra-wealthy 1%ers behind every decision made in its government and the desperate, vulnerable people just trying to survive and keep their families fed. TLDR, the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. Every person in Night City survives one of two ways. The corpo rats buy their way to the top through money and influence, while those strong enough to fight, steal, and kill do so by any means necessary. Enter cyberpunks. Cybernetically enhanced career criminals that usually work for hire, using customized hardware and software to accomplish their goals and earn their living, oftentimes through bloodshed. The game's protagonist, V, starts their journey from any one of 3 life paths and ends up a merc for hire in Night City, alongside their best friend, Jackie Wells. V and Jackie's friendship in the early hours of the game represents the ambition and hubris of youth. In their desire for a life of luxury and excess, career criminals usually desensitize themselves from contemplating their own mortality, oftentimes even flirting with it as a means of achieving their goals.
Unless you catch it, stray or not.
Even then, you go out with a bang, right? And the street'll talk, the street'll remember. It's a win-win.
This ultimately culminates in the demise of both Jackie and V at the end of the game's prologue. The duo's first major fixer, Dexter Deshawn, chooses them to steal a piece of experimental technology known as the Relic. Essentially, it preserves the soul of whatever rich person pays enough for it as digital code to be placed later on inside a new body before they die of old age. When the job goes wrong in the worst way possible, the relic is damaged, and Jackie dies, forcing V to slot the relic into their head to preserve it. In order to save himself from the consequences, Dex betrays V by shooting them in the head while the relic is still slotted in. Ironically, the thing that saves V's life is what drove them to their death in the first place, the damaged relic, which restarts their brain and begins to replace their consciousness with the engram stored in its memory. War veteran turned rockstar/eco-terrorist Johnny Silverhand. Unable to simply remove the damaged chip from their brain, a several-week countdown begins, during which V is forced to come to grips with not just their demise, but also the nature of existence and memory, as they search for a way to stay both alive and themselves. As death inches closer and closer, and the game blurs the line between V and Johnny, we the players witness a cerebral, ultra-violent race against time to fight for what makes us human, both what separates life from death, and what makes that life worth living. You might be surprised to know that Cyberpunk 2077 is not an original property. The developers had been working on this project for many years, making it as a direct follow-up to the tabletop role-playing game Cyberpunk by Mike Pondsmith. In fact, Pondsmith served as consultant for the project, ensuring that the setting and lore within the game remained consistent with his original work. The video game is set within the same world and features a lot of the same world-building and character creation aspects as the original. You can customize your character's physical look, their skill sets, cybernetic enhancements, and rank up as you go. Movies are no longer the norm in this world, and in favor of a more immersive and satisfying experience, audiences in 2077 consume brain dances, VR recordings transmitted directly into the viewer's brain, allowing them to experience all 5 senses of any experience they choose, as well as the emotional highs that come with it. With the right equipment, viewers can even extract sensitive information for high-risk missions. As far as real-world combat, guns aren't the only option you have to defend yourself, although there are certainly some interesting choices, but we'll talk about those later. There are a number of deadly and highly effective enhancements available to implement and upgrade throughout the story. Speed and reflex enhancers like Sandevistan and Kerenzikov, titanium bones that enhance carrying capacity, and built-in weapons like gorilla arms and mantis blades that will leave only pieces of your enemies behind you. And I do mean pieces. Software perks like overheat signals and optics reboot allow you to use your enemy's cyberware against them, making stealth missions easier and turning the tides of open combat in your favor. The game's first and only expansion, Phantom Liberty, introduces relic abilities like enhanced speed, healing, and damage stats, as well as new cyberware. As the relic takes more control of V's mind, more abilities are unlocked, but so too are new side effects of your dying body. As you explore Night City, you learn more about how this unique and harsh world came to be. Tensions abroad between the United States and Central America led to a social and economic collapse in the 1980s, resulting in the European Union and Japan becoming global superpowers, and the consequent rise of the game's main antagonist, Arasaka Industries. Gang wars, political conspiracies, and corporate warfare are all obstacles that V will have to face on their journey to save themselves from the relic, as well as the most frightening enemy of all, cyberpsychos, victims of faulty cyberware coupled with a mind unfit to adapt. The mentally ill victims of cyberpsychosis resort to murder and mayhem as they become further detached from reality. These enemies are tough to beat, each presenting a new and unique advantage over V, the most terrifying of all being the hulking, murderous cyborg Atom Smasher.
You look like a cut of fuckable meat.
Less human than man, his cyberpsychosis is more in line with his personality anyway. He prefers his near indestructible cyberware to his old body, and calls the victims of his slaughter meat. His main nemesis? None other than Johnny Silverhand. And perhaps the most mysterious and richest part of the world of Cyberpunk, the Net. Netrunners jack in via personal link and travel to the edges of the Black Wall, which separates humanity from a void filled with dangerous rogue AIs, and if they're lucky, pierce their way to the other side unscathed. Night City serves as a window into a new and dangerous world. It's tough to survive, but the most ruthless people often do. It often comes at great cost, as Night City changes everyone. Some for the worse, but a lucky few for the better. What the... Wait, did I forget to download the new update? Fine, I'll be right back. Okay, so now that we've downloaded the new update, let's talk about one of my favorite parts of the game. Not you, Skippy, we'll get to you later, I promise. Anywho, in this portion of the video, let's talk about Johnny Silverhand. More importantly, let's examine the relationship Johnny has with V and how that serves the narrative of the game. As I mentioned before, Robert John Linder was a war veteran whose eyes were opened to the horrors of capitalism when he lost his arm and a good friend during the Second Central American War. He later renamed himself Johnny Silverhand after his signature metallic left arm, and dedicated his life to two things: rock and roll and the dismantling of the system. His band Samurai became extremely successful, but ultimately broke up as a result of Johnny's ambition. But his death was mainly brought about by one thing. In pursuit of his goal to take down the Arasaka Corporation, he became increasingly angry at the world around him, and because of this, he took advantage of the people who cared about him the most. His ex-girlfriend, Alt Cunningham, a talented netrunner, was kidnapped and murdered by Arasaka, and it was Johnny's fault that he pursued his own end goal instead of considering the harm that his anger caused on his loved ones. The song Never Fade Away by Samurai details his regrets for how things turned out. He blamed himself for Alt's death, and his rage and hatred for Arasaka only grew from there. Ultimately, in his quest to make things right for her death, it cost him his life. In 2023, the bombing of Arasaka Tower during what became known as the Arasaka Nuclear Holocaust led to thousands of casualties and Johnny's death by Arasaka's doing, followed by his consciousness being stored inside the relic using the software that Alt designed, Soulkiller. For 50 years, his consciousness was stored in the relic, which was vaulted inside Arasaka Tower, until it was stolen by V. V's story started in a very similar manner. Like Johnny, V relentlessly pursued something they were passionate about, an iconic reputation and wealth, alongside their best friend Jackie. And like Johnny, V also became clouded by their ambitions, which ultimately cost them everything. It was only fate that the relic malfunctioned, offering both V and Johnny a second chance at redemption. Their friendship at first is often volatile, with Johnny's manipulative behavior serving more as an obstacle to V than an advantage.
Alright, prove it. How'd Samurai's third ever gig end?
Hey Johnny, get your digital ass out here. Feed me my lines.
How about this? Fuck you, V ain't your stupid sidekick.
Consequently, V treats Johnny more like a parasite than an ally, which is understandable, but ultimately serves to their detriment. They don't initially trust Johnny's knowledge of Arasaka's history, leading V to some dangerous choices, not the least of which is V's trust in Arasaka's disgraced bodyguard, Takamura. I've never ever trusted this guy, by the way.
All I ask is that you do not leave the city.
Leave? Why would I leave? Need help. Best chance I'll find the right person here.
Someone other than Arasaka specialist? There's no one. No.
Are you sure about that?
Towards the later half of the story, as V and Johnny get to know each other, they realize how their differences can serve as strengths for each other, and how they're not so different in the first place. V learns not to trust in the wrong people, and in hindsight, how their hubris leads down a path to a fate worse than death. In turn, Johnny also learns what's really worth fighting for in life, and what makes the cause he believes in so important. The people you love. Over the course of the story, V meets many valuable friends, overcomes personal obstacles, and depending on the player's choices, gains a romantic partner. Shout out to Pan Am and Judy, for obvious reasons. Through the bond between V and Johnny, the latter finally discovers, vicariously, a sense of fulfillment that he never knew was missing from his life. And in doing so, he discovers that this is a fight that he cannot and should not win alone. With V's help, they can finally overcome— Oh, come on! You kidding? It was just getting good! Okay, so let's finally talk about the technical quality of this game, because it's a pretty big issue and we cannot avoid it any longer. The circumstances around Cyberpunk 2077 are kind of a poetic irony. The story surrounding its launch, critical and financial failure, and its return to public favor in the years that followed are an interesting parallel to the narrative within the game itself. Anticipation for this game was high in the years and months leading up to its release. It seemed like CD Projekt Red were working on something really special that intended to push the boundaries of what gaming could be, and reignite the cyberpunk genre as a whole. The demo at E3 2018 left fans begging for more, myself included. Fans appreciated the lush open world that felt grimy and full of potential for ultra-violent action-adventure. Cyberpunk wasn't really even that well explored as a genre, which added to how fresh the concept felt. CD Projekt invested heavily in the game's built-in lore. Keanu Reeves was brought on to play Johnny Silverhand, and they even brought in real-life Swedish rock band Refuse to record songs as Johnny's band, Samurai. Other artists like A$AP Rocky and Grimes also played heavy roles in the game's sound development, and Grimes even has a small role in the game as pop artist Lizzie Wizzy. Spoiler alert, she's a psychopath in this too. On top of that, the game's star-studded narrative, which combined fun bloody action with thought-provoking existential philosophy, added depth to a project already bubbling with potential. All of these things should have been lightning in a bottle, and the game should have had more success than it did. So why did it fail? In later months, it was revealed that despite the heavily detailed character creator at the beginning of the gameplay would be locked into first-person mode, save for a few small sections of the gameplay and certain cutscenes. Word spread that crunch time was the norm at the development studios. Developers were overworked with last-minute changes occurring far too frequently to keep up with deadlines. Continuous delays led to death threats being sent to the development team. And finally, on December 10th, 2020, Cyberpunk 2077 was rushed across the finish line on multi-generation consoles as well as PC, after spending 8 years in development. Reviews for the PC version shined, with the mostly polished gameplay allowing people to fully immerse themselves in the world and branching choice-based story, but console versions suffered from an undercooked technical experience. This severely damaged people's perception of the game as a whole, not to mention the studio's reputation. Backlash and lawsuits from investors followed as word spread of the console version's clunky and deeply flawed final product. And then finally, the most embarrassing part of this entire disaster followed, delivering the final blow for CD Projekt's reputation. Only 7 days after the initial release of Cyberpunk 2077, Sony announced they would be removing the game from the PlayStation Store, as well as offering refunds to those who purchased the game digitally.
What a piece of junk!
I'm going to be the first to admit I liked the game, even at launch, though there were times where the technical aspects did frustrate me. At launch, the PS4 version suffered from some very frustrating and frequent crashes. During certain cutscenes and dialogue sections, you're not allowed to save your progress, so I had to learn quick to be very paranoid about my progress. There were times where I would find very rare items in the open world, followed almost immediately by a crash, and I would lose all my in-game progress and never see that item again. I remained a fan because I was so taken by the story, but I have to be honest, this was a very punishing gaming experience for all the worst reasons it could be. Anyone who says Cyberpunk was the worst game they've ever played, I couldn't blame for saying so. This is not how you release a game. I understand the circumstances of the game's release, but at the end of the day, it seemed like CD Projekt got caught up in expanding the scope of their project without delivering where it mattered. But to everyone's surprise, and just like it was for V in the game's story, this was not the end for Cyberpunk 2077. In 2022, CD Projekt and Netflix produced Cyberpunk Edgerunners, a 10-episode limited series set in Night City, sometime before the events of the main game. The series follows David Martinez, a high school student in Night City who, after the death of his single mother, joins a gang of cyberpunks, or Edgerunners as they prefer to be called, and... Wait a second.
Edgerunners?
Another word for cyberpunk.
Hold on 1 minute. Cyberpunk and Edgerunner mean the same thing? So this means the show is called Criminals?
Well, that's just lazy writing.
Regardless of the show's redundant title, it's safe to say that Edgerunners is the main reason that Cyberpunk 2077 is still talked about today. I can safely call this one of the best things Netflix has done in recent years. The series received universal acclaim, both from newcomers as well as longtime fans of the game. The diverse and colorful cast of characters and beautiful animation style, combined with a heart-wrenching and fascinating story, were an instant hit with audiences. Most importantly, this show served as a perfect complement to the game's already expansive lore, exploring more closely than the game did the effects of cyberpsychosis on the mind, and the nuances of how late-stage capitalism affects those most vulnerable. David Martinez is an instantly likable protagonist. In the same way as Miles Morales before him, the voice acting combined with clever character work made him both relatable and charismatic, centering him as a uniquely entertaining hook for the show's emotional core. I found myself genuinely wanting to see David succeed and be happy. His relationship with Lucy serves as the main driving force for the whole show, and as his character evolves, so too does the tension surrounding the future of their romance. As David installs more and more new implants and his sanity decays, you start to really worry about him and about Lucy. It was actually a really effective narrative, which makes the final few episodes that much more devastating.
You have a said Devistan?
A rudimentary implant.
I'm the one you're after, ain't I?
All the same meat to me. I'll slaughter each and every one of you.
Not unless I zero your ass first!
Out of suppressants.
The ultra-violent action pulls no punches, and combined with well-crafted character work, it makes each character's death 10 times as devastating. This is how the show develops established characters from the game like Adam Smasher to have that much more of an emotional impact upon replaying the game. I can easily say that having replayed the game, Adam Smasher was a much more intimidating presence than ever before, especially with the knowledge that he brutally massacred all my favorite characters from Edgerunners. R.I.P. Rebecca, you didn't deserve what happened to you.
We're having a moment here! Fuck down! Fuck down! Fuck down!
70% chuck steak, 20% short rib, 10% fat, freshly ground. The secret here is not to overdo it, not to overdo it, not to overdo it.
I'll admit, I didn't have the highest opinion of the show at first. I thought it was an incomplete narrative that thrust newcomers into a world they might not fully understand at first. The importance of certain events in the show's earlier episodes, such as Rogue letting David and his crew into the afterlife, might fly over some people's heads, especially if they have no knowledge of the game. I even disliked certain parts of the ending, like how most of the characters I liked were killed quickly, as if the showrunners just wanted to reach an end goal and didn't care about a satisfying ending. But then I realized that this was meant to be consumed with the game in mind. Viewers were supposed to be enticed to find out more about this world after the show had had its impact on them. they might be surprised to find out just how big a role Arasaka plays in the balance of power this world has, and it may even strengthen their views on the game's true ending, as well as the characters involved. On its own, Cyberpunk Edgerunners is for sure a masterpiece in its own right, but it's that much more enjoyable with the main game in hindsight. The stellar character work, breathtaking animation, and fascinating lore all contribute to the success of the show, and in effect, the success of the game after the fact. Cyberpunk Edgerunners, and later on the Phantom Liberty expansion, started a renaissance for Cyberpunk 2077. Shortly after the series debuted on Netflix, sales and user activity for the game on PC skyrocketed. Word of mouth quickly spread of the game's vastly improved quality from launch. I fell off of Cyberpunk after beating it a few times because, I'll admit, the technical experience was getting in the way of me playing through it another time, but I came back to an immensely improved and surprisingly fresh experience. The graphics, skill tree systems, and the way things ran in the game seemed a lot smoother and more refined. It made me want to experience the game again from the beginning. And of course, I still love the story, so I was very excited to play the Phantom Liberty expansion. And even that was fantastic.
Saul, I've made so many mistakes.
It's all right, son. Not your fault. The blame's on us. All of it.
On you?
I was thoroughly surprised and impressed by the depth and suspense of the story, and just how much it added to the Cyberpunk lore. I loved exploring the new district of Dogtown and going on this adventure, seeing all the new stuff and meeting new characters. Probably my favorite thing about Phantom Liberty was how heightened the aspect of mystery was. For a long time, the story does a great job at making sure you're constantly on your toes, and that you never 100% know who to trust, either Song So-mi or Solomon Reed. It makes every decision in the story that much more frightening, because you feel like it's costing more and more, and taking you further away from your initial goal of saving your own life. It was probably one of the best DLCs I've ever played, and I can tell a lot of people agree. And it certainly helps that now the gameplay quality matches that of the main story, and I have to gush about how awesome it was to beat the new and improved Adam Smasher with Pan Am and the Aldecaldos by my side.
Gonna let you in on a little secret. Johnny, he's here with us. Now he can't talk, but I can feel him under my skin.
What the fuck are you talking about?
In the end, gotcha. Silverhand triumphs.
And seeing V finally come to grips with her own mortality and accept whatever comes, be it death or some miraculous opportunity for life, but to live it on their terms, is the perfect ending of the game. It was surprisingly very satisfying on an emotional level, and it even gave me a new appreciation for life. I know that sounds cheesy, but I'd be lying if I said that's not how I felt. And here's where I think I should introduce the quote I was going to introduce earlier, because now that the picture's clear, you can appreciate it just a little bit more. Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left of it and live it properly. What doesn't transmit light creates its own darkness. Marcus Aurelius. Hey, what's that noise? Okay, let's talk about Skippy for a moment. In the open world of Night City, you can find an automatic pistol named Skippy. He's located in an alley near what I assume is the dead body of someone who stole him. You guys, I want you to listen to me very, very carefully. I am dead serious when I say this. This is the best gun I have ever used in any game. Ever. Full stop. Skippy is so much fun to use and so helpful and actually hilarious. I mean, how often do you find a gun that sings Rihanna to you?
What are you doing?
I'm making the wait more pleasant with a soothing melody.
It also talks to you when you reload your magazine, and it even has an auto-lock feature that only fires headshots. I mean, how cool is that? Of course, it is too good to be true, and eventually Skippy does lock you out of that feature, and you can't switch out of non-lethal mode.
Stone Cold Killer mode has been deactivated. From this point on, only puppy-loving pacifist will be available. Thank you.
But why? Why is it blocked?
Opening frequently asked questions. Item: why can't I kill more than 50 people? Answer: the fuck is wrong with you? Please go see a therapist, you psycho. Note to self: rewrite later. Do not forget.
Whoever came up with Skippy is a genius. No gun will ever be as cool as this. I will accept no criticisms, that is a fact. End of story. I was actually kind of sad when I had to give him back to Regina at the end of the side mission, though on my next playthrough I may just keep him, just to see what happens. Today, Cyberpunk 2077 is being called one of the best games ever made in recent years. It's received a ton of critical acclaim from fans and has since won a ton of awards, including Best Ongoing Game at the 2023 Game Awards. And I think that's really fucking weird!
Oh, come on!
It's really hard to articulate how I feel about this, because on the one hand, I do love Cyberpunk 2077 with all my heart. I firmly believe it's one of the best games out there in its current form, but on the other hand, think about what we dedicated fans had to go through to get here. I'm not mad it didn't win Game of the Year, or even any other award to be honest, because... yikes. But to anyone out there who is apprehensive about playing the game, I can't recommend it enough. Yes, the bugs. Yes, it had a horrible launch, but that was years ago. It's had the proper time, care, and love poured into it by both fans and the developers, and I think now in its present form, it's ready to be loved for the masterpiece it was always destined to be. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to rate this game like I do all other titles in the series, but just know that I do consider this to be one of the best games I've ever played. It took a while for me to be able to say that, but I do mean it. Just please, 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 don't make this a normal thing. Release a finished game next time. Thank you. Skippy, though, he gets a 10 out of 10.
You are the best user I know.
So if you have played Cyberpunk, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. Do you like it? What are your thoughts on the game's history? And what's your favorite part of this game? Let me know in the comments. Also guys, I'm very happy to announce that my book, Scales of the West, is now available on Amazon in Kindle, hardcover, and paperback formats. Check out the link in the description to get your copy ASAP. I'm very proud of this book. I've been working on it for the past 4 years, and I'm so happy to share it with you. As always, be sure to like this video and subscribe, follow us on all our social medias, and please support our Patreon so you can get the chance to request a movie or show you'd like to see us talk about in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Diego for Cinemageddon Reviews, and I'll see you on the Wasteland.